I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old on Old. This week we are looking at Gone with the Wind. So, guys, if you're new, what I do every single week, now that the series sort of gone snowballed, and now we're on to the third episode, what I do is I break down a new film, a new movie that I've seen before, a classic movie actually that I would consider classic. You know, that term's sort of loose, but I think for the most part I've been doing sort of classic movies that I haven't seen before. Now, I've seen sort of the big classics like Citizen Kane and Casablanca, but you know, there are some classics I haven't seen. Something like this, which is a huge blind spot in sort of my film knowledge, if you would call that, and really I think that I had to watch this movie because it's Gone with the Wind. It's the highest grossing movie of all time. There's so much historical attributes to this movie that are so significant, and I think that it was really crucial for me to watch it. I mentioned that it was the highest grossing movie of all time. Now, that's sort of a huge sort of deal. Now, it is sort of partially skewed because it had, I think, like 8 re-releases, and it made a lot of its money through these re-releases, but that only tells me how sort of significant it was pop culturally. Plus, I think that to be released 8 times, people still go back to the theaters to watch this movie. And you have to realize that I think it made something like modern day $500 million in its sort of opening sort of release. And you know, movies did different things, how they toured, they went to the big cities, and then they took years to get to your city. Sometimes, you know, movies be in theaters for a year and a half. So imagine seeing I don't know, the Black Panther. If you were in Los Angeles, you would have saw it in you know, in February 2018, but if you're in some small town in Kansas, you're not seeing it until February 2019. So that's how, you know, there's all these complications with how, you know, differences, how it's hard to compare it today versus then. And then, you know, Avatar is one of the highest grossing movies of all time, but then a lot of those ticket sales were 3D, so the ticket prices were increased. Anyways, the point is that Gone with the Wind was such a huge, sort of remarkable thing that everybody saw Gone with the Wind in America at that time. It was such a crucial sort of movie. Plus, you have to realize it had to even have the international market. And I think it did what, for example, Mario did for video games. Mario was sort of, there were video games before Mario, there was Pong and whatnot, but Mario was the big one that everyone knew, that everyone played. And I think that the same thing happened with Gone with the Wind. Gone with the Wind was a movie that everyone saw in 1939. This is the same year of Wizard of Oz. It's sort of solidified movies as a huge cultural landmark, and as from a cultural perspective, this movie is super significant. I wanted to cover it, but the main question, I guess, was I incorporate my opinion into it, which is, does it hold up? For the most part, yes. It is long. That's the huge sort of criticism against that, and it's long because it's 4 hours, but it's also slow, especially for modern day standards. A modern day viewer like myself, I like slow movies. I sort of trained myself. I watched something like Annihilation this year, which is a very slow movie that has some tense parts, but it's not very action oriented. Gone with the Wind's really slow, and it's 4 hours, and I think it's so hard for me, like, I don't know if I'd ever re-watch this. I don't even know if I'd ever recommend it to anybody. The only people I'm recommending it to is actually probably the people watching this video, sort of the film buffs, people who want to learn more about history. I can say that without doubt I've learned so much about history, and there are some really great parts in Gone with the Wind. For the most part, I say 2.5 out of those 4 hours, even 3 hours, there's really interesting stuff, and there's incredible themes going on, and really you get to know these two characters so well. Really the character of Scarlett O'Hara, and that's where we get into what I really love about this movie, is that it is a fantasy fulfillment movie. I think that's why a lot of people latched onto it. It tells the story of the South of the States before the Civil War, and it's sort of an interesting thing because we know the end. We know that they're going to lose, but then we see sort of Scarlett at the beginning, where she's this Southern belle, and then we watch how how the war sort of happens right as her adolescence is hitting. And that sort of changed her, and she has to go into survival mode, and then how the South loses after the war, and totally sort of changes her life. But I think what's really great about the movie is that it's not about the Civil War. It's not a Civil War movie. There's no action battle sequences. It really is about Scarlett O'Hara. Now, I think a lot of people see this movie as a romance between Rhett Butler and Scarlett O'Hara. Now, really, in my opinion, this is a Scarlett O'Hara movie first and foremost. Yes, the second half of the movie, and yes, Rhett Butler is a certain big part of Scarlett O'Hara's life, but Scarlett O'Hara is a central character. It really is this sort of character study in this unique arc of a crucial moment happening at your adolescence and how that changes you. And really, I say this is not about the Civil War because the Civil War does this to Scarlett, and without the Civil War, it would have turned out differently for her. But I think it just sort of emphasized her morals and what she believes in. She was always sort of this ruthless, sort of hard-edged sort of woman. She wanted what she wanted, and we see this at the beginning of the movie where her cousin, I believe, marries Ashley Johnson, who is sort of her lover, who said he loved her, but then he ended up marrying her, and then she has to marry 3 times, and then I think, yeah, she's married 3 times throughout the movie. Once where the guy dies in war, and then another time later on. But really, I think the first, a lot of people sort of pick sides. There's the first half before the intermission, which is very much romantic in a sense, and ends on a romantic note. And then there's the second half. But I really see this movie as a great whole, because the second half doesn't have a huge shift. It does really slow down the second half, in my opinion, but really just sort of stays on that point where we see in the first half she is the Southern Belle, and then she becomes sort of this really sort of hard-edged sort of survival woman that's just trying to survive the war and becomes a nurse and is working, getting her hands dirty. But it's really that second part of the movie that we see her stay that way, and she becomes sort of a cunning businesswoman. But all within this, I found that it's Scarlett O'Hara. It's a girl who is still going through her lovers, but still can't sort of connect. It's not this romantic relationship that they sort of paint it out to be between Rhett Butler and Scarlett O'Hara. It's this sort of interesting relationship where Scarlett O'Hara from the beginning wanted Ashley Johnson, and she goes through guys and goes through events, and even though she's doing all these great things and she's surviving, it's not as well as what it used to be. This movie is sort of, as an audience member, some people, I mean, have criticized it for certain, I think well-deserved criticisms, but sort of understanding the South. And I think very much if you want to understand America, and especially during this time period, it's crucial to understand the Civil War. And this movie sort of takes a character from the Civil War era and sort of lifestyle and shows how it changes the lifestyle, and sort of a really sort of huge marking point, changing point, turning point in American history. I think this is very much an American epic. I think that's why it resonates with so many Americans. It's not necessarily patriotic in a sense because it shows the South and how they lost, but it does romanticize the past the same way the character romanticized the past, which is why I think these themes really add up really well. You have the character of Scarlett O'Hara who wants Ashley Johnson and goes through these lives, and Rhett Butler is a big part of that life, but she yearns for it. And I made a Letterboxd review, which is an app where I log all my movies there that I watch throughout the year. You can follow me at Connor Rold on there if you want to check me out. But what I said in my original review was, it's a movie about a girl who can't let go of her past, told in a way that taps into our own love for the past and the future we all wish we have. I think that sums it up really well, just because the character of Scarlett O'Hara herself goes through lovers, but realizes that really, I think she loves Ashley Johnson and she can't get over that. And does she love Rhett Butler? Yes, but not as much as she loves Ashley Johnson. And she's always yearning for that past, yearning for before the war, when she had a simpler life. She didn't have to do all these things. She had sort of a man to help her out with all these things. And the same way the movie sort of romanticizes the South and sort of these sort of unique times, and that sort of overlooks the slavery, and there are some sort of modern day, you would consider them racist things that you couldn't put in the movie, especially some of the African American characters. So that's why there are some things that it doesn't hold up as well as maybe people think it is. It's 4 hours long. I would not consider it one of the greatest movies of all time, yet I think this explores so many unique themes. It's not a romantic movie like it is. I was surprised by it. I was very intrigued by that fact that it's not a romantic movie between Rhett and Scarlett. Maybe if I watch it again, I'll focus more on Rhett and less on Scarlett. But I really think this is more a character study than people sort of relate it out to be, because it is about Scarlett O'Hara, her transformation, and the lovers in her life. But ultimately, I think it comes down to her love for Ashley Johnson and the lost love that was her and Ashley Johnson. I hope I'm saying Ashley Johnson right. I know it's Ashley, I'm not, which is always strange. It sort of stuck out to me like, oh, Ashley is a guy? Yes, it is a guy. maybe they'll remake Gone with the Wind as a lesbian thing and Ashley's a girl, but is it too long? Yes. Is it dated? Yes. Does it feel like an old-timey sort of American epic? That Treasure of Sierra Madre feels like a modern-day movie. This feels like an old movie? Yes. But is it a classic? Yes. It has a certain charm to it. There are underlying themes that I like it. And it's just a movie that you start trying to like this character, but as you go along, you sort of distance yourself from her because you see sort of her lack of morals and how ruthless she is just to survive. And it raises almost moral questions that I had with myself as, what would I do in those situations? Would I have done those things just to survive the war? You know, it's different times, sort of like the World War I women, where they sort of took over these men's jobs. We see Scarlett O'Hara take over these men's jobs, and then after the war, sort of stay in this sort of area, and then sort of we see that, yes, the South was bad, but also when the North came in, how that sort of, they really tried to screw over the South, and things like taking over things, forcing rent prices to go up. So it's interesting sort of political and historical time period as the backdrop, but the same way Cabaret uses the rise of Nazi Germany as a backdrop, it's really about the cabaret. Same here. Even though Civil War is the backdrop, it really is about Scarlett O'Hara and Rhett Butler. I've sort of been maybe undermining Rhett Butler, but I really want to nail home the point that I think Scarlett O'Hara is the big part. Rhett Butler is a big part of her, and she does love him, but she doesn't love him enough as Ashley Johnson, and it's almost a tragic tale because Rhett Butler really loves her. And she loves him, but not as much as he deserves. And it's a tragic tale in that sense. I think, though, it's a movie every cinephile needs to watch for historical reasons and just to understand it's the highest grossing movie of all time. Some people think it's one of the greatest movies of all time. I like it. It's a little long. Will I rewatch it again? I don't know. But I do recommend it to all cinephiles who are probably watching this video. But anyways, guys, I'm Connor Old. Make sure you like the video. Comment below. Let me know, would you like to see me do some other movies? Just put out a list. I love sort of interaction with the film community. That's the reason I created this YouTube channel. But anyways, until next time, stay tuned.